Baby flung the dice and bet it all. Didn't give 2 cents about my flaws. Whatever the hell I drive her to, said she's all in, win or lose. Well, I put her through some times you wouldn't believe, and she just rolls with me.
Welcome to the Only One Shot Golf Podcast. I'm Jim Gallagher Jr., and I'll be your host. We appreciate you listening, and don't forget to subscribe to wherever you get your podcast, and appreciate you checking us out. We're going to go back a couple years where I had Barbara Nicklaus, the wife of the great Jack Nicklaus, on, and we did a podcast with her a couple years ago, and I think it's only fitting that we have that. This is the Cognizant Classic week. Used to be the Honda Classic down at PGA National. Of course, Jack redid that golf course. They're big-time supporters of the Children's Miracle Network hospitals, and, of course, Play Yellow for Kids. It was an amazing conversation we had, and what it was like to have a front row seat to watching one of the greatest, if not the greatest player to ever play this great game, and some great insight into Jack and why they've been so supportive of so many charities, especially lately. Wonderful people. She's one of the sweetest ladies you'll ever get to meet, and I can't wait to go back for y'all to listen to that, and let's go back and relive that podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome Barbara Nicklaus to the Only One Shot Golf Podcast. Barbara, thanks so much for taking some time with me today.
Well, Jim, I'm very complimented that you called. I miss seeing you and Sissy. That's probably the one thing I miss about the tour is seeing you guys. So hope all's good with you and your family.
Yeah, everything's well. That is one of the things when we kind of quit traveling and quit playing, we miss our friends we've made over the years, and that's one of the things we have to adjust. But what I like to always get with my guests, I always kind of find out a little bit about them. And tell us a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and what it was like growing up in Barbara Nicklaus's life.
Well, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and my dad was a high school math teacher, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I just figured, just had a pretty normal growing up period, and went to, junior high and high school, and then really didn't want to go anyplace but Ohio State. So went to Ohio State, and, of course, at that time, wasn't so hard to get in. You almost said, here I am, and give me my classes. And Jack actually grew up in Columbus in another section of town, so we didn't know each other growing up, but he only wanted to go to Ohio State. So we actually met the first weekend of our freshman year in college.
Wow. So, did you play sports growing up? Because I know your family's so athletic, not just Jack, but the grandkids, your kids are all so athletic. Did you play sports growing up?
Well, I guess I should say yes. I played volleyball and softball and just high school sports, but I never went after a sport, after high school, just for fun.
How about golf? Did you play golf at all? Because it's always amazed to me that the people in our lives that, golf is somewhere in there, but did you play any golf, or have you played much golf?
Golf was never in my life. I'm not even sure I knew how to spell it. Like I said, my dad was a high school math teacher, and so they had no country club, membership or anything. And actually, golf was not a very big sport when I was in high school. It's kind of like if you didn't do anything else, you played golf. So I really didn't know golf existed.
I kind of compared it to playing the piano. We loved to do it, but we didn't let anybody know we did it. I mean, it's kind of that kind of theory, back then. But, Tiger Woods kind of made it cool to play golf again. But you mentioned you and Jack met your freshman year. What was college like for you, both of you, kind of going through that whole thing and seeing Jack have some success there? And what was that like growing up, or at least going to Ohio State?
Well, actually, he really hadn't done a whole lot in golf at that point. I mean, obviously played on the high school golf team, and they didn't even give golf scholarships at the time, and he was offered, would you believe, a basketball scholarship at Ohio State. But our meeting was kind of cute and silly. I was walking by a building on campus, and I saw a girl up on the stairs that I had met in high school. We had little high school sororities back then, and she was president of her high school sorority, and I was president of mine. So I stopped to say hello to her. She was talking to Jack, who she was dating at the time.
Okay.
And so he introduced us, and unfortunately, she had to go to class, and Jack walked me to the bacteriology building where I was working to pay my way through school and called me up that night.
Wow, that is a cool story. Isn't that amazing how God puts those things in our plans? We don't know what the plan is, and he's right there. There you met Jack, and she went to class, and then the rest is the history. But
the rest is history.
Exactly. Y'all get married, and he's going to start trying to play the tour. What was that like at first? You get married.
Well, actually, we were married between our junior and senior year in college, and he had won the National Amateur.
That's right.
In 1959, and then we got married in July of 60. And it was funny because I picked the date because it was the weekend of the PGA Championship, and I knew as an amateur he could not possibly play that week. So that was when we got married, and we were married and had Jackie before Jack turned pro.
Oh, that's right.
He was trying to go to school. He was trying to sell insurance, and he was trying to play golf, and not doing any up to his expectations. And he looked at me one day and he said, Barbara, if I want to be the best, I've got to play against the best. So he decided to turn pro in November of 61, which was just about 6 weeks after Jackie was born.
Yeah, because his plan wasn't to turn pro when he went to college. I think he was trying to be a pharmacist. His was more into the going to school and getting a job and going forward. I don't think he planned on turning pro before that, did he?
No, I don't think he did. And Mr. Jones was a good friend, and Jack really looked up to him. And I think Bob Jones was hoping that Jack would stay and kind of continue, as an amateur.
Mm-hmm.
But, like I said, he just thought he needed to play against the best.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that because you got to find out how good you are. If you don't play against the best, you'll never know. But y'all traveled with Jackie, and that had to be very challenging. There weren't daycares back then as there is now.
That's funny you mentioned that, Jimmy, because we were laughing about that last week. Station wagon, porta crib set up in the back seat, diaper pail in the back seat. And we thought, wow. But you know what? You did what you had to do, and it was fun.
Yeah, and it was funny when Sissy and I traveled with Mary Lyndon, our oldest. We packed 1,000 things, and by the time we got to Elizabeth, our fourth, we were packing one bag each, or putting two in each bag. You kind of.
I took my own sheet. I took my own sheets when Jackie was born. My baby wasn't going to sleep on motel sheets.
No, because back then you were just trying to survive, and it wasn't like you were staying in the nicest hotels, I'm sure. But what was it like? You've got a baby, you got Jackie, and you're trying to encourage Jack. That you've always been encouraging. Is that something that came natural to you?
I really don't know how to answer that, but I can tell you one little incident that probably did more for my marriage than anything. It was the Masters in 1962,
mm-hmm.
and Jackie was born the September before, so he would have been 9 months old, and I had left him at home. And there were about 6 or 7 wives on the back patio there where, everybody hangs out at the Masters. And I was bemoaning the fact that I missed my baby and, I needed to get home to my baby. All of a sudden, there was an older woman sitting on the chair there knitting. And all of a sudden, she looked up. She put her finger in my face, and she said, "Listen, little girl, you had Jack long before that baby was born, and you hope to have Jack long after that baby's gone. Now you grow up and be a wife."
Wow.
And I was kind of startled. It happened to be Alita Mangrum, who was Lloyd Mangram's wife. And I was kind of startled, and I never saw her again for about 10 years. And I saw her, and I said, "Alita, you'll never know what you did for my marriage." I said, I'd be home with 2 babies, and Jack would call and be lonely. And I said, "I want to tell you, I was on the next plane to get to that tournament." So I just told her, and I said, and that's a lot of the same advice I give to the young girls is you don't stop being a wife just because you become a mom.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, and that's great advice. That's kind of that tough love. Sometimes it gets our attention when we're kind of feeling down, and boom, it kind of wakes us up. But as you mentioned, you travel with multiple kids, and Jack's starting to rise and become a star. I mean, how did you guys juggle all that? Because that's always been amazing. I always put like Jack and Bruce Litsky, who always put their families first and their career out there as well. Two guys that did it about as good as anybody. How were you able to juggle that and kind of balance all those things, or even for Jack, being a dad and a white husband and all those things? How'd you balance that whole process?
You know what, Tim? I don't think we ever thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
You just do what you have to do. We were 20 when we got married, so we kind of feel like we grew up together. And when he turned pro, he made a vow to me. He said, "I will never be gone from you and the children for more than 2 weeks at a time." And he never was.
Nope.
And, that's hard to do, but he made it a commitment, and he said, "I refuse for my kids to go away to college and say, gee, I wish I'd known my dad." And believe me, he was all 5 of their best friends.
He may have said that. That's probably one of the quotes I always use, because people ask me why I kind of quit playing at 40. And it was kind of like, golf wasn't as much fun because the kids were growing up. And when I was on the golf course, I wanted to be home. And when I was home, I wanted to be on the golf course. And it's kind of like I wanted to be their dad. I didn't want them to wake up and say, well, your dad's Jim Gallagher, but I don't know him. And that just would have crushed me. And I think that's what's so admirable of how Jack handled it, and the people who were able to be successful. But they've got to have someone like you, like I have Sissy, to kind of help us along the way and kind of kick us and kind of straighten us out sometimes and be there for us, because it's a team. It's a team effort, don't you think?
Oh, it is a team effort, and Jack and I both said it's 95% give and 5% take on both sides.
Yeah. That's such a great statement, because I just think it's a great life, but it's what you always dreamed about doing. And of course, the money now has gone so much easier for these guys to travel. They're able to take private planes, bring nannies and all those things. But, it's guys like Jack and Arnold who paved the way for that allowed us to be able to have these type of lives and be able to play for the bigger purses and those things. But is there any tournament that really kind of stands out that you really, to you, I know the 1986 Masters with Jackie on the bag. Is there one that kind of sticks out that you were most memorable?
Well, of course, you just mentioned the 1986 Masters, and it's hard to get past that because, here's Jack, who was not supposed to win. He was too old, over the hill. Jackie's on his bag for the first time. And, I guess just to see them walk off the green, and I know Jackie, our son Jackie, just wrote a book, Best Seat in the House.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of talks about 18 father-son lessons that, between his dad and him. And I think that was one of his most special moments. That said, here's my dad, who has just maybe won the Masters, and I'm just kind of humdrumming it, walking over to put the flagstick back in the cup, and I look up, and here's my dad walking toward me with open arms, telling me that I care.
Mm.
So I think probably even after seeing Jackie's words in his book, that makes 1986 even more special.
Yeah, it brings a tear to my eyes. I asked Jack when your grandson made the hole-in-one in the par 3 tournament to name one of those memorable moments, and he said that one right there might have beat all the...
He put his finger up as he walked by Curtis Strange, who was commentating,
Mm-hmm.
and Curtis said, well, how does that rank? And Jack just put that index finger up and said, number 1.
That's one of the things we as parents, and I think the folks that listen to this, and you're a parent of a young child out there, we enjoy watching our kids succeed. Now, we don't want to make it about us. It's got to be about the kids. But when your kids or even your grandkids do something like that, it does. It trumps everything we accomplished as individuals, and that's one of the great things about being a dad and being a grandfather. And that's one of the things I can't wait for my 2 little grandsons and the third one coming in September to watch that, because I don't know how y'all juggle all that with all those grandkids and how you call them by their names, because I can't even call my 4 kids by their names properly. But what is it like to have grandkids? That's got to be one of the more rewarding things in life. I mean, you loved your kids, but your grandkids are even more special.
It is great because you see how proud your own children are, and then here's another generation. And I do kind of laugh, Jim, when you said, being a father and watching your kids. Jack would fly across country for a baseball game, or he was in the Mexican Open one year and flew from Mexico to Tallahassee for a high school football championship. And we kind of laugh because now that our children have kids, I think they thought that's just what dads do. Now
Mm-hmm.
that they have kids over there, and they said, Mom, Dad really did that? He flew across the country for a baseball game? And I said, he sure did. He wasn't going to miss anything you guys did. So to watch your own kids with theirs, it's just a whole new ball game, and it's so refreshing, and it kind of thinks, well, maybe we did teach them something, even though they taught us more than we thought.
Yeah, it's just life is just so precious. And I remember Sissy told the story when she first met you. It was with Dr. Richard Coop up at Ohio State. She was playing in the national championship. They went out to the Muirfield to watch, and she just said she just was always impressed by you. And you I think this is years later. I'm playing with Jack at New Orleans, and you called her by name. And she just was amazed how you could do that. And I think that is a gift. And I know I've read somewhere where you kind of had a little trick of how you could remember people's names, that you made a little note. And when you got to that town, you kind of had that little note or sheet that kind of reminded you. Is that how you did it, or did you have a better trick than that?
I think you're giving me more credit than I deserve. I think one of the things that I did try to do, if you think about it, when you meet someone and they say, hello, I'd like you to meet John and so, you really pay no attention. You just say, oh, hi, nice to meet you. But if you actually say the name, it helps a little bit. So maybe I did cheat a little bit and try to say the name a couple of times.
Well, it sure worked. I'll tell you, I was so fortunate to play with Jack several times, and there's so many that stick out. Doral, I played with him 2 or 3 times there. It was so cool. I actually played with him at Doral. This was March at '86, before he won the Masters. I know his back was hurt, and I was just like, this poor guy can't even walk. And I'm telling you,
over the hill.
I didn't call him over the hill, but I told my dad, I think Jack might be done, and I'll be darned if he doesn't win. He had an ability to just like turn it on and off as good as anybody, but he was always so kind to me. I actually was paired with him at Muirfield, but my coolest moment, and you probably don't even remember this, or I do because I always remember this. We were at Augusta, and I think it was the second round, and we're walking up together on 18, and we're almost to the green. Of course, I stopped to let him walk up, and he waved me on to walk up there with me, and I just thought that was the coolest gesture. And it gives me chills just repeating that story, because he was always kind to me. And even though he was, to me, the greatest player, but he was also just the whole package. And he always was kind to me. And, he actually, and you probably don't even know this, when Frenchman's Creek, they were managing that, he got me a place to play there. I was able to play and practice when I was first on tour because of Jack. And of course, I knew Jackie playing in college when he was at North Carolina, and Gary, and we played a bunch on tour together. I remember one time we were paired with Gary, and you both came out there, and I was more nervous having Jack watch me hit a chip shot than playing in the actual tournament.
I think that was at Doral.
It was.
Because you were so kind to Gary. And I think that was one of his first rounds ever. And he said, how lucky could I be to get Jim to be my first partner on tour? So you were so kind, and we'll never forget that.
Well, I just felt like, it's so easy to be nice. It takes a lot more effort to not be. And I always I followed Jack's lead, or I followed Bruce Litsky. Always was like that with me. He would include me with the Curtis Strangers and all of those guys that were 10 years older than me, and made me feel welcome. And I said, if someone's going to do that, that's the way you're supposed to do it. I mean, if you can pass on some knowledge and just be kind. It's so much easier to be kind than that. And your kids were always great. Jackie was always wonderful. We had some good times together. But, when you look back at their careers, how tough was it for you? I know you watched Jack play, but to watch your own kids play, that had to be, I know Jack it was probably tricky for him to do that as well. What was it like following your own kids?
People would say to me, is it harder to watch Jack, or is it harder to watch the kids? And I said, you got to be kidding. I said, I figure Jack can take care of himself. I said, I always think I can help the kids. You can't, but you think you can. So, it's a heck of a lot harder to watch the kids. And, they were kind of in a difficult position, and they knew it. And, they really, most of our kids really weren't interested in golf, just because, they didn't want the spotlight on them. So, and I think they've all ended up just fine. They tried it, and it wasn't their cup of tea, but they've all done great, and they've all got great families. So
well,
what more can you?
You can't ask much more than that. I agree. I think that's one of the things. That is a lot of pressure. I never even put it in perspective. It's like, man, they are playing. I even thought that with my own kids when they were starting to play a little bit, and 2 of my girls played in college golf, and it was just like trying to live up to what other people's expectations were, because they can be, suffocating themselves and then your own expectations. So it would have been tough, because they lived in kind of a glass bowl, and people,
when Jerry was 16, he had won a tournament, and he ended up on the cover of Sports Illustrated at age 16. And Jim, he ran away from golf. It was kind of like, I didn't deserve that, and I haven't really done anything on my own. And he really ran away for a couple of years. He'd go from the 18th green and run to the car.
Wow.
It's okay. With all of that, there's so many pluses, you can't even worry about that.
No, but how'd you encourage him when those pressures were on him like that? What did you say to them? Because that's a tough situation to be in.
You know what? It just had to work itself out, and it did. I don't think you even really discuss it because there's no right answer. And he figured it out, and all the kids did, and and they adore their dad. So it all worked out.
Exactly. Now, you and I have had some conversations about your grandson, who's quite the football player. When he was at Florida State, we had a lot of fun at your house talking about that. And now, gets to the NFL. What's that like to watch your grandson in the NFL? That has to be so cool.
Well, it's funny because since Nick was 3 years old, that's all he's ever wanted to do. And, to see a grandchild really have his dreams fulfilled and do exactly what he wanted to do, it's been fantastic. And all the kids have supported him, and hopefully we don't know if he'll play this year or not. He was out last year with a heart problem, which is great. He's probably healthier now than he was before. I think he'd like to play a couple more years, so I hope someone gives him a chance. But, to be a tight end in the NFL is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty doggone impressive. You're right. And played at a great school like Florida State. But you and Jack...
And he's a good kid.
He is a good... I'm sure he is. I don't know any of your kids or grandkids who aren't. I mean, that's a sign of, you all planted the seed, and they just went ahead and just grew those families the same way you did. But you guys are really big time into charities, and children's charities especially. You got the Play Yellow. It's just so big, involved with the Honda Classic. How much fun is it to see that you're able to take what you all have accomplished and give back to the children's charities and the local communities and all the people you're able to help? That's just got to be so rewarding, isn't it?
Well, I think Jack and I are kind of flabbergasted at how everything has grown. And, of course, it all goes back to Nan at 11 months old who was choking. And by the time we'd get her to the doctor, she'd be fine. Or if he'd come to the house at that stage, she'd be fine. And finally, after a couple of months, my pediatrician said, Barbara, there's something wrong with this child. We need to get an X-ray, get her in the hospital and get an X-ray. Well, ended up she had inhaled a blue crayon. So,
wow.
Of course, when it was fine, but when it lodged, she choked. So they did a bronchoscopy, and in the process of lifting the crayon out, they dropped a piece in her lungs, which, of course, went into pneumonia, and she's in an oxygen tent for about 6 days. And, we're sitting there as young parents hoping she's, going to survive. And we looked at each other and said, if we were ever in a position to help someone, we wanted it to be children. So 2004, move ahead, the Honda tournament was moving up to our area in Palm Beach Gardens, and they came to us and said, we've always done children's charities. Do you have any ideas? And Jack kind of looked at me and said, do you want to go for it? And I said, absolutely. So we started our foundation, Nicklaus Children's Healthcare Foundations, and did a few projects for, local hospitals and something. And then we made kind of a partnership with Miami Children's Hospital, which they came to us after a couple of years. It was a great partnership and said, we really are trying to be more global. Could we change the name to Nicklaus Children's Hospital? Which they did. I guess it's been maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. So it's been fabulous to see, if you just see one child who's been helped, you know why you're doing something. And another thing, Jim, which has been so wonderful, I mean, I've been in kind of the charity thing for a long time, which, was things I did when Jack was gone. And he was fine. Well, now that he's not playing so much, he has gotten so totally involved. It is so much fun to see him get attached to these babies and kids and see, we built an acute care pavilion on the flagship campus in Miami. And just to see him, help us, I've had to raise his salary 3 times this year, from 0 to 00 to 000. So we're really having fun, and it's kind of given him another outlet, when he's not playing so much golf. So the charity thing, I probably gave you much too long an answer.
No.
But it's been wonderful. We feel so blessed that we've been able to help these children. And it's just been a blessing all the way around.
Absolutely. A blessing for those children and their families as well. And it, like you said, it's been so impressive to watch Jack get involved, because a lot of times, that they're not as involved, but he is involved. And I think it does. It touches your heart when you see those kids and you see someone, like you said, touch a kid in a family's life.
Well, I love him saying, he said, this is far more important than any 4-foot putt I ever made.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's what we get to, and that's what you hope to get to in life, where, golf is a game. We love it. And just, I was going to ask you what's your most proudest moment, but it's got to be the charities and your family. I mean, it's hard to say. Your lives have been so special, but it's really been special for me. I've been able to play at Lost Tree and come over and spend some time with y'all at the house. You've always made me feel welcome. And, you're just special people. You're normal people. I think that's the Midwest, in y'all. I mean, I grew up in Indiana. It's the same kind of values. When I moved to Mississippi, I felt like in Mary and Sissy, it was the same. There's so many great people in this country, and we're just so blessed to live in this country. And I think that's one of the things you think about. Our game was able to take us to so many special places, and I would have never dreamed to be able to accomplish the things and to meet people like you, but it's been really a blessing for me as well. But I appreciate you spending some time with us. I know y'all are busy. Jack's working.
Well, we love you and Sissy and miss seeing you guys. So hopefully we'll all get together soon.
Absolutely. And you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And thanks again for spending some time with us, Barbara.
Well, thanks for thinking of me, Jim. I'm very complimented.
What an incredible conversation we had with Barbara Nicklaus. Just one of my favorite people of all time. She's always made me feel welcome. My wife, Sissy, our entire family. We exchanged Christmas cards for years. Just an incredible person. I remember just how sweet she was to my father-in-law when my mother-in-law passed away. We were newly weds, and she had got to meet Sissy several years before, when actually Sissy was at the NCAAs up in Columbus. And she's just been wonderful to everybody. And Jack has just been incredible to me as well. So I appreciate everybody listening. And don't forget to get your copy of Only One Shot. That's available at Amazon. Special thanks to Steve Azar for allowing us to use his music. And great to go back and live back to that podcast. Until next week, we'll talk to you later.
Flying down that levee road, trying to see how fast you go. I got my baby along for the